Hey all, I'm really sorry that I can't be in the Netherlands in person today. I was very much looking forward to seeing you all and to discussing patients' online record access in person. But a huge thank you to the organizers for allowing me to record my presentation and at least be there virtually. My name is Maria Hägglund. I'm an associate professor in health informatics at Uppsala University and Uppsala University Hospital in Sweden. And I have been doing research on patients' online record access in Sweden for 10-15 years now. And I'm really happy to be sharing some of our experiences with you today. So I'm going to start my presentation with a brief introduction of what the system is like in Sweden and how it was implemented. Then I'll discuss a little bit a comparative study that we've done a couple of years ago now, so I'm not sure how relevant it is, but where we looked a little bit at the difference between implementation in Sweden and the Netherlands. And then I'll continue with sharing some results from one of my PhD students who is focusing on adolescents and parents' access to electronic health records online. As I mentioned, we will focus on Sweden. And in Sweden, I'm not the only person researching patients' online record access, but I'm part of a research consortium called the DONE Consortium. And I've put the link to the website in the slides here. And the picture is from our 10-year anniversary of patients' online record access in Sweden, which we, of course, celebrated greatly. And on the DONE website, you can find all publications from the entire research consortium, so not just from my research group. So how did patients gain access to their records in Sweden? It actually started already in the 90s in Region Uppsala. So we are very proud of that in Uppsala. There was a GP who wanted to give his patients online record access. And in collaboration with the region, they set up a pilot system and they tested it with 500 of this GP's patients. And they all loved it, the GP as well. And they wanted them to implement it more widely in the region. But then the Data Inspection Board in Sweden, which is now called the Integrity Authority or something like that, they heard about the project and actually shut it down, the broader implementation, because the legislation in Sweden at the time did not allow patients to have direct online access to their records. This, of course, caused a bit of controversy and discussion. The legislation was phrased so that in order to have direct access to a patient's medical record, you had to be employed by a healthcare provider, and patients were, of course, not. This, together with other reasons, led to an update of the Patient Data Act in Sweden, and in 2008, this was approved. And so Region Uppsala started over again with their previous experience, and now also in an EU project called Sustains to work on re-establishing this service of giving patients online record access. And in 2012, all patients in Region Uppsala could log in and have access to their medical records online. And I think the exact date, because I was on vacation in Thailand and I had to go up to the hotel room on the 8th of November 2012 and log in online and, of course, tweet about it as well, because at that time we had something called Twitter. And so I know that this was when it happened. But this was, of course, only a very local solution in Region Uppsala. And the healthcare system in Sweden consists of 21 autonomous regions. So this was not in any way a national solution. But in 2014, there is an organization called Inera in Sweden who is responsible for providing a national infrastructure for healthcare, and they had established in parallel with all this happening with the record a national health information exchange platform. And I'm not going to go into details on describing this, but I just leave it here. It's an important milestone in the development in Sweden. And the local Uppsala solution was then moved to this national health information exchange platform, which meant that it could start to show patients records also from other regions. And a first version of a national regulatory framework was also decided upon based on the experiences from Region Uppsala. And this national regulatory framework, since it was very difficult for the regions to agree on certain topics, such as should signed or and on unsigned notes be shown to the patients? Should there be a 2-week waiting period, or should you have immediate access to notes, etc.? There was a lot of room for flexibility in this regulatory framework. So there were a lot of options, which also led to quite a bit of diversity, you might say, or fragmentation in how patients were then beginning to gain access across Sweden. So more and more regions connected. There was also in 2016 an updated version of the national regulatory framework because it was acknowledged that there was such fragmentation, and in some regions you didn't have access to very much information, etc. But this new regulation has not really, there's still differences, I would say, regarding in which region you, depending on in which region you have received healthcare, you might have delays in access, or you might not see unsigned notes, etc. But the main idea with the 2016 regulatory framework is that all patients should have immediate online access to all documentation in tax-funded healthcare, which is most healthcare in Sweden, including dental care, actually. And there are very few exceptions. And the exceptions are, for example, if there's an ongoing police investigation, or if there is real risk of the patient coming to harm, or someone else coming to harm. Or if there is, for example, a suspicion of abuse or violence in a relationship. So those are the reasons when you can exclude access. And in 2018, the last of Sweden's 21 regions started to sharing notes through this, the national patient portal. So it took from 2012 Uppsala to 2018 about 6 years for all of Sweden to have online record access. But of course, the process had started much, much earlier. And how do we then in practice do it? We go to our national patient portal, which is called 1177, a little bit of a cryptical name, but that is because 1177 is also the phone number you call if you need advice from a nurse. So it's a national phone service as well. And hence 1177 is well known to all Swedish citizens. This national patient portal, as you can see here, it says Region Uppsala because I have chosen my region when I go to the platform. There's no logging in the first step, so you can find all sorts of general information about, as you can see, for example, COVID-19. But you can select the region, and then you can find a little bit more specific information for that particular region. This patient portal has been very, it has been used a lot. And as you can see, especially during the pandemic, use of the portal went up a lot. This was one of the main information sources for many Swedish citizens when it comes to pandemic. And as you can see, there's also, before the pandemic, there was an interesting pattern of visits going down in summer and peaking around January, February every year, which is flu season in Sweden. So you can see that there's a recurring pattern of people seeking health information. Of course, you can also log in to the National Patient Portal. And when you log in, it looks something like this. It's only available in Swedish, hence I kept it in Swedish. But what you can do is you can find, you can add your healthcare providers, you can send secure messaging, book appointments, and you can also act as a proxy. And of course, you can access your medical records online, or journalen as we call it in Swedish. And when you choose journalen, it will look something like this. And you can have you have access to notes, to prescriptions, lab results. If you're a child, you might have a growth curve, vaccination records, diagnosis, etc., referrals, warnings, care plans. And important for the upcoming part of the presentation, you can also have access to your children's record. If you're their legal guardian, you will have automatic access to their records until they turn 13. So this is me having access to my son's record. This service has also seen a lot of uptake over the years, very slow in the beginning, but as you recall, it wasn't until 2018 that all citizens in Sweden had access. And then it has grown, it has grown slowly over the years, with about between maybe 80 and 100,000 new users logging on each month, which has gone down actually a bit after the pandemic. Now we're down to about 50,000 new users each month, which is maybe because during the pandemic, people used the platform a lot, and we had a lot of new users using it. And in total, more than 7.2 million individuals have at some point logged in to read their records online. And with a population of about 10.3, 10.4, I would say that that's quite a good uptake of a patient portal. And specifically then in this case, the medical records, accessing and reading your medical records online. So how does this then compare to the situation in the Netherlands? Well, actually we did this study in 2018, a master students from Amsterdam and Professor Ronald Cornet and me, we did this qualitative study where we compared a little bit the implementation in Sweden and the Netherlands. And so the study was done in 2018. It wasn't published until 2021 for several reasons that I won't go into, but hopefully there's still a little bit of relevance to this study. So you can find it, it's published open access at Frontiers journals. And one of the major differences we saw, of course, was the national infrastructure in Sweden, where we do have one national patient portal where patients log in, and it then in turn connects to the different EHR systems used across Sweden, which is, as far as I understand, a difference from the situation in the Netherlands, where patient portals are more connected to individual hospitals and directly integrated with the electronic health record systems. Even though there is a national policy and an incentive program to encourage healthcare providers to give patients online record access. So as far as I understand, the Dutch context is somewhat more similar to the US context, where each healthcare provider ensures that they have a patient portal and they give online record access. And in this study, we tried to explore, we did qualitative interviews with key personnel that had been involved in the implementation in Sweden or in the Netherlands. And we aimed to identify barriers and facilitators. And we used the SAPHIR framework, the Consolidated Framework for Implementation Research, as the theory that informed both the interviews and our analysis. And we could see that many of the barriers were described similarly in both contexts. So resistance was described as a barrier, and then mainly from healthcare professionals. And I didn't mention that very much when we talked about the Swedish implementation, but it was very controversial when it was first implemented in Sweden. And there was a lot of resistance from healthcare providers who did not want to, or healthcare professionals, and in particular physicians who were not happy about this change in practice. I would say that they have gotten used to it by now and they see the benefits much more, but in the beginning it was a lot of resistance. Another barrier that was also highlighted in both contexts were technical barriers, both when it came to the EHR system and actually integrated with them, and collaborating with vendors. Facilitating factors that were seen in both contexts was stakeholder engagement, both with clinicians and with patients. And also strong leadership. So especially when it comes to overcoming strong resistance, engagement strategies were not always enough, but you also needed a strong leadership that actually made decisions even in the presence of resistance. In Sweden, there was also a very, the national infrastructure and the national program management was also seen as a very strong facilitator that was not perceived in the same way in the Netherlands. So that was a major difference between the two contexts. And if we look at the SOPHIA framework, it identifies a number of concepts that are relevant when it comes to implementing anything, actually. So the SOPHIA framework and other implementation research frameworks often identify the target group, the intervention itself, in our case, patients' access to health records, inner context, that is the context within an organization that is making this change, and the outer context, which might be, for example, legislation, etc. And last but not least, the implementation strategy as important domains to be aware of when planning or performing an implementation. And when we look at specifically patients' access to health records, the intervention is, of course, very important. How do we actually design this patient portal, which is usually the case of what information is included? Who decides what information is included? What access procedures do we have? Is it difficult to log in? Is it difficult to sign up for the portal? Does it require signing up? In Sweden, anyone who has a national electronic identification, which most people have, can log in without signing up or requesting access, etc. Standardization, one of the technical challenges when it comes to presenting information from different sources. The target group, of course, is very important when it comes to patient online record access. Do we reach all patients? We know that health literacy can be a factor, and also digital literacy, of course. And resistance from healthcare professionals have often been identified as a problem. The context in which the intervention will be implemented and used is, of course, of high relevance, and this includes infrastructure, as I mentioned, from Sweden. But also other types of incentives, laws and regulations, of course, and governance and culture. And last but not least, how do we implement the intervention? What resources do we add? Is there education? How do we have champions? And one thing that they've seen in the US is for example, that patient champions are very important when it comes to overcoming healthcare resistance barriers. So these are some of the important issues that we have identified through research in several different contexts. And we're also doing now studies in the UK, which is very interesting because they are just on the verge of providing patients in England with required or mandatory record access, which has also had a lot of resistance to it. But let's move on to the last part of the presentation, which is me channeling Josefin Hagström. So these are Josefin's slides and Josefin's studies that she's been doing as part of her PhD project. And she focuses on parent proxy and teenage access to electronic health records. And her work is done within a project which is called Nordi Health. And since I don't have so much time, I won't talk so much about the Nordi Health project, but you will find a link to it in the last slide. And the Nordi Health project is a collaboration between Sweden, Finland, Norway and Estonia, where we have actually done a survey across all 4 countries with about 29,000 responses, 13,000 of which were from Sweden, and Josephine is focusing on the responses from adolescents, so people between 15 and 19 years old who has responded to this survey. And the reason why we did not include younger people than 15 is because the legislation in Sweden requires both legal guardians to consent to teenagers under 15 to participate in research. And that was simply too complex for us to handle in this survey. So we limited ourselves to the age groups 15 to 19. But first of all, another study that we've done within the Nordic Health Project is that we've looked at the legislation in the 4 countries that are included. So what are the rules actually around children, parents, and adolescents having access to their medical records? And when it comes to parents' access, as I mentioned, we have automatic access in Sweden to our children's records, but only until they turn 13. Similarly, in Norway, until the child turns 12. Finland has an even lower age limit until the child turns 10. And in Estonia, parents have access to the children's records until they turn 18. Quite a bit of diversity. In Sweden, parents can also apply to have continued access up until the child is 16. But they have to apply for it, and they have to apply for each specific clinic. So it's mainly thought of for children with complex health issues, for example, where parents need to be very much involved. In Finland, similarly, there is actually a new regulation there, which I don't think has been fully implemented yet, but which requires at each healthcare visit that the healthcare provider makes an assessment of the child's maturity, and if the child is mature enough to consent to giving patients their parents access, they can do so. A little bit complex. Let's see. So when it comes to the teenager themselves, in Sweden and Norway, they have access from the age of 16. In Finland and Estonia, they have access from birth. I assume not many 1- and 2-year-olds actually log into the patient portal and use it, but in theory they could. So here it's more a question of when they are old enough to have a login, I assume, to access the records. Again, there are rules in Sweden and in Estonia where the adolescent or the child can ask for restricted access for their parents in certain cases. For example, if they have sensitive issues that they don't want their parents to be able to read about. So this is the regulation in the 4 different countries. Quite diverse, even though we think that we, as the sort of Nordic, Baltic, we are quite similar, but apparently we have quite different rules. And as you can see, there is an age gap. There is a gap actually in both Sweden and Norway where parents and adolescents don't have access, neither of them. In Sweden, you can apply for it, but very few people are aware and do this. Moving on then to the results from the patient survey. So adolescents identifying errors and omissions is one of the things that we've looked at. And Josephine also analyzed this from a gender perspective. There were no gender differences in the responses. We had about 259, if I remember correctly, adolescents responding to the survey. So it's not a huge sample. Teenagers who identified as other gender, they found more errors than men and women, or girls and boys. So about 60 of the respondents had found an error in the record, and 44 had found missing information, which is about 27% and 20%. We also asked them to assess the gravity of the errors and omissions. And most of them, errors were actually, about 20% of the errors were not at all serious. About 46% were considered somewhat serious, and 30% very serious. And missing information seemed to be more serious, actually. There were very little, not at all serious missing information. We also asked them about if they felt that it was easy to find errors or omissions, and many actually found that it was quite difficult. Omissions. And this might, of course, have to do with health literacy and teenagers perhaps not being very confident in their reading the records. We also asked what they did when they found an error, and the vast majority did nothing, which is also an interesting finding, and not very similar, I might say, from the adult population, or not very different from the adult population. Josephine has also done other studies. So the Adolescents Finding Errors and Omissions has been published at the MIE conference last year, so that publication can be found. And this summer, she also presented a poster at the MedInfo conference looking at adolescents and young adults' experiences of being offended after reading their health records online. The proceedings have not been published yet from MedInfo, but I'll share the link as soon as they are. Finally, we also asked a little bit more in general questions about their experiences of reading health records online. And these are not yet published results. So these have been submitted to journals, but not published yet. The majority of adolescents read out of general curiosity, which is quite different from the adult population, where general curiosity comes much further down on in the list of reasons for reading their records, but also to get an overview of their medical history and to be sure that they understood what the physician or healthcare professional said, and to improve their understanding about their health issues. Rarely to share documents with anyone, with relatives or other healthcare professionals or friends. What kind of information did they feel was most important? Test results, clinical notes, list of medications. But in general, they rated more or less all information as very important. There are, of course, other functions that can be used as well on the patient portal. And here they rated being able to contact healthcare providers or contributing with their own health information very highly, even higher than the adult population, in fact. Whereas functions to of course, access and manage services for family members was rated quite low, and blocking specific information as well. We also have a submitted paper looking specifically at security and privacy of online record access. And adolescents seem to have quite high confidence that the Swedish patient portal is a secure service to use. And they trust the login process. They think that the EHR generally maintains a high level of security, and they trust that only authorized medical staff are accessing their EHR. They also have little privacy concern with copying health information to the EHR, but here they are more careful, which they do not agree to a high extent with having privacy concerns, or they do have privacy concerns with copying information to other online applications. Yes, that was all from me. probably talked a bit too long, but I hope it's okay anyway. And I'm happy to answer any questions as best as I can. Thank you.